We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet to share these conversations on the Vegan Compass podcast.
We extend our respect to elders past, present, and emerging, as well as any of our listeners and guests. Hello, and welcome to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change.
We're your hosts, Rick Allport and Mackenzie Cross.
In each episode, we bring you meaningful conversations with vegan changemakers that remind us progress is possible, even in a world full of bad news.
Hello everyone, we're so excited to be with you again this week for another episode of the Vegan Compass podcast. This one's really special. We've got a guest joining us online from the US, Gail Eisnitz. She is a farm investigator of over 40 years. So I'll hand it over to Rick to ask our signature question.
Well, firstly, how are you this morning?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Bit of an early one, but I'm used to getting up early, so not too bad.
Well, that's okay because we're actually very honoured to have our guest here today.
Yes.
She's coming in all the way from South Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, so that's pretty amazing. And I love the fact that we have technology that means we can reach out to people across the world. So wherever people are, if you want to come onto the podcast, let us know. But, of course, we're going to start with the first question. Gail, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, thank you, Rick and Mackenzie. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name is Gail Eisnitz. I work for Humane Farming Association as Chief Investigator. I've been doing that I've been working as an animal cruelty investigator for 43 years. And I'm from the Western North Carolina mountains, which is really beautiful. And I document and expose animal abuse to farm animals in slaughterhouses and factory farms.
Very challenging job for sure. You've just published your second book, Out of Sight, so congratulations, and that's going to be the topic of our conversation today. So can you tell us what made you want to write this book and how it's different to your first book?
Sure. My first book, called Slaughterhouse, you can tell by the name that it was a nonfiction expose. It was very serious, and it was a litany of violations of laws inside USDA inspected slaughterhouses. And this book is quite different. It's a memoir. It's a story of my life from my childhood right up until now, documenting and exposing violations in slaughterhouses and also in factory farms. My first book didn't talk about factory farms, but it talks about my challenges, my life challenges, my personal challenges, and my triumphs too. So that's pretty much the difference. I wrote it so that it's not like a litany of horrors, because I wanted this book to be read by a mainstream audience, not just animal activists. My first book, Slaughterhouse, was very successful, turned a lot of people vegan, a lot. But I wanted this to reach beyond vegans. I wanted it to reach people that don't know about what goes on behind the closed doors and guard shacks of slaughterhouses and factory farms.
Well, the book is extremely powerful. I mean, even though you say you've written it for a wider audience, it still impacts really strongly, which I think is brilliant. I'm going to have to look up Slaughterhouse, I think, and read that one as well. But early on in the book, you actually talk about your childhood and that you battle undiagnosed OCD and also an undiagnosed visual processing disorder. So because of that, what was your early life like?
Well, it was not that abnormal, but inside my internal life, I felt very isolated and alienated because I didn't know what OCD was until I was in my 30s. So here I was doing all these really weird things and not knowing why. I didn't feel like I had control over my own body. And the visual processing problem, which means a few things. It means that I see the world as made up of dots. My whole world is pixelated, which is fine because that's the only way I've ever seen it. So I'm used to that. But it also caused me to feel like I had dyslexia of the world. It was like nothing made sense. It was like living in a funhouse mirror where just things didn't compute, and it was very confusing. And so between those two undiagnosed conditions, I felt I played and had fun with my friends, but inside I felt very strange and very isolated and alienated.
Sounds very challenging.
Yeah, I seriously don't know how you managed to deal with that. That just seems, overwhelming to me. But yeah, well done on pushing through and doing everything that you've been doing.
Oh, thank you. The undiagnosed visual processing disorder wasn't established in the medical literature until 12 years ago. So for that reason, I wasn't diagnosed until 4 years ago. So I was in my mid-60s when I was diagnosed. And that was a big surprise because for my whole life, I sort of blamed myself for my problems because you sort of do that if the doctors keep telling you there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, I can't even imagine having to navigate. But I guess, as you said, this is just how your experience has always been. So you've not had any other choice, but you just have so much perseverance. And in reading your book, that was just the underlying message that really came through for me. And we'll touch more on your diagnosis a little bit later and how that felt to finally have the answers. But I just want to stay on your childhood for a little bit longer. There was a story that you shared in the book a moment where you really first identified with the helplessness and isolation of animals. So I would love if you could share that with us.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think I was about 12 years old and there was a documentary on public TV. It was called Say Goodbye. I think it must have been the first documentary ever about endangered species, and it was very compelling and it troubled me. But there was one scene in there where a mother polar bear was shot at point blank range by a rifleman, and her two polar bear cubs ran off, and she was dying, and they turned around and looked at her. And they had such terror and bewilderment in their eyes. And she was, as I said, she was dying and they didn't know what to do. And that image was the last image of the documentary. And it was seared in my brain. And it was from that moment on that I knew that I had to do something to help the world's animals.
That would actually, completely blow you away to see something like that. I mean, we've watched Dominion, of course, a film by Chris Delforce here in Australia, and it documents so much of what goes on behind the scenes, and you just walk out of there and you feel like your whole soul has been crushed.
Yeah.
Because you realise what humans are capable of.
Yeah.
And I think this is the thing, books like yours, and of course, your earlier book, Slaughterhouse, goes to reveal to people, if they're ready and willing to be open to these conversations, to find out exactly what's going on. Unfortunately, people still like to turn that blind eye and go, oh, no, I don't want to see that, but I still want to, eat the flesh. But that brings us to, so now you've been vegan for 20 years now. So at what point did you then make that connection to turn vegan?
Well, I've actually been a strict vegetarian since the 1980s, and maybe 20 years ago, I sort of just transitioned. It was just a natural thing to do. I'm not sure what precipitated it, but it was just natural because I had been a very strict vegetarian for a long, long time. And today, I used to be like an animal welfarist. Now I'm definitely an animal rightist, and I would no sooner eat a Big Mac than I would take a bite out of my precious kitty cat Abel. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, like the connection. As soon as you make that connection, and if you're doing it for the animals, you can't turn around. You can't walk backwards, because that's always in your brain.
Yeah, I agree.
People, and look, I know some people who go vegan for health or vegan for the environment. They eventually become vegan for the animals, but it's usually those people who are the ones who turn away from veganism, not the ones who have turned vegan for the animals. And welcome to the abolitionist world. It's lovely to have you with us.
I think definitely a natural progression after all of the undercover work that you've done, I'm sure.
Yeah. I stopped every animal I investigated. I stopped eating, so that's kind of how it worked.
Makes sense. I'd love to go back to your early career. Your first job in the animal protection movement was as a writer and editor for the Humane Society in the US in the 80s. But you had this desire to get out in the field. So can you tell us more about that transition?
Well, I had done a little investigating on my own before I ever went to work for the Humane Society of the US. And I got a lot out of it, and I was able to get several articles published in the New York Times. That's the only way I was able to get into the animal protection movement, because back then it was such a small movement. Nobody was really hiring. But anyway, I just felt like writing about animal abuse was kind of limited. I just wanted to get out there and do the documentation myself. I thought it would be more productive because I knew I could write about it, so I could document and then write about it. So that's the path I took.
Interesting path, and of course it's taken you quite a long way through the movement. But one thing I found really interesting is that you were the only female national investigator working for the largest animal protection organisation in the country. How did that feel, sort of walking into and working in a very male-dominated industry?
Well, to be honest, back then there were only two of us. One male and one female. So it didn't feel that weird. All it felt was that I had to do what had to be done, and I just put one foot in front of the other and just got out there and started investigating. So I didn't even think of it that I was different from my coworker much. I just thought this information needs to be documented and exposed. So
what were some of the sort of early investigations that you did?
Oh, we did a little bit of everything. When I worked for the Humane Society of the US, we did everything from puppy mills to animal sacrifice to dog racing to cockfighting, things like that.
Oh,
yeah.
Animal sacrifice. It's just this, you said those words, and I got like chills up my spine. Yeah. Sorry.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've seen the documentary Christspiracy, but there's a really confronting part in there in India with the animal sacrifice. And oh my gosh, I understand that there's a religious and cultural aspect to it, so I don't want to judge that aspect of it, but it is very confronting as someone who's not part of that culture.
I'm judging.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was the animal. We were looking into Santeria, which is an Afro-Cuban religion where they sacrifice animals. So we were documenting that.
I'm sure that was very confronting. You also were very open in the book about your health struggles, and at 35 you were diagnosed with breast cancer. And you shared that despite that diagnosis, you continued to work hard. You felt compelled to keep documenting slaughterhouse violations. So I'm just really curious how you had that resolve to keep going and keep pushing through despite everything you were experiencing with your health.
Well, I had many obstacles. The media would not expose my findings. I had a very bad boss from hell at the Humane Society at the time. he would not let me expose my findings. He's, just to throw out a teaser, he's serving a life sentence in jail now. I won't say what for, but I had so many obstacles. Prosecutors wouldn't prosecute. And so I just felt like I had to keep documenting. And I took medical leave from HSUS, and they thought I was on medical leave. But to be honest, I was running around the country documenting more slaughterhouse violations. So that was an opportunity to continue getting the goods on the industry.
You're incredibly dedicated.
Yeah, I've got to say, I admire your dedication and your sense of purpose. It's amazing. And again, people, you've got to read the book.
Yeah.
You need to read the book, and we need to get Slaughterhouse. So that's next on my list. But one of your more prominent slaughterhouse investigations you share in the book is the case against Iowa beef processors, which of course is now owned by Tyson Foods, one of the worst, companies in animal rights or animal abuse. Now, this started from a workers' strike, which you attended to obtain interviews from whistleblowers. Can you tell us what did you uncover from that?
Well, I uncovered that they were striking because the line speeds were too fast and they couldn't do their jobs properly. And I knew there were probably problems for the animals as well. And I uncovered the fact that they were routinely skinning and dismembering hundreds of animals a day while they were still fully conscious. Oh, and the workers were extremely outspoken and signed affidavits and went on camera with one of the television networks here in the United States saying they were sick and tired of skinning and dismembering cows alive. Of course, the network killed the story on the grounds that it was too disturbing and people might change the channel. But they were such great workers that they were so forthcoming and just wanted to stop having to skin and dismember cows while they were struggling. We were able to get videotape of the cows on the line hanging from the bleed rail with their eyes looking around and bellowing and being skinned while they were still hanging there. And I built a strong case, and I sent it, and I took it to the Attorney General for the state of Washington, and she didn't want to have anything to do with it. So then the governor heard about it because we got local television exposure, and he impaneled a task force to investigate. And over the next year and a half, while the violations persisted, and I got more and more affidavits, the task force, which was made of like the state Department of Agriculture, the state police, the local prosecutor, and the attorney general who didn't want to be involved, she headed up the task force. And they alleged that we had manufactured the evidence and orchestrated the case for fundraising purposes.
Yeah, it's beggars belief, honestly.
Yeah, I remember one of the criticisms of Dominion when it came out. They said, "Oh, you activists have staged all this footage, and you've created all this problem. You're the abusers." And I'm thinking, what makes you think that activists could actually do that? Yeah. And falsify information? But it sort of brings me to a slight little segue before we move forward. Is I've been reading a lot recently about the stress on the actual slaughterhouse workers and how it actually affects them in their day-to-day life. Did they share any of that with you when you were interviewing them?
The workers at the Washington State plant, which was the biggest plant in Washington State, didn't really talk about the impacts on them psychologically, but the workers at another plant where the hogs were not being properly stunned and they were being immersed into the scalding tank, they talked about it. And they said that a lot of them became alcoholics, drug abusers, They had fantasies of slitting the throats of their supervisors. They slapped their wives around. Some served time in jail. So it definitely took a toll on them.
Did you know that most of our listeners aren't subscribed yet?
If you're enjoying the conversation and believe these stories deserve to be heard, make sure you're subscribed.
It's a free and easy way to help us grow and keep these conversations going.
Yeah, it's not surprising when you have to perform acts of violence every day, especially at that speed for your job. Yeah. So is just trying to remember back to the book correctly. Was the hog farm, was that the South Dakota case?
No, it was a hog slaughterhouse that I was just describing.
Okay.
The South Dakota case was a hog farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just going back to the prosecutorial issues that you were facing, essentially you had to face that again when you were exposing the hog farm in South Dakota. And I guess, how did you deal with the constant setbacks despite all of the evidence, despite taking it to law enforcement? They just were rejecting any, I guess, responsibility for it.
Yeah, they were so lame. They just sat on the case for at least 6 months. It might have been longer than 6 months, and then we urged them to follow through. I mean, the violations in that hog factory were so heinous that you couldn't even believe it was true. And we have videotape of all of it. But he just sat on the case for 6 months or longer, and then he finally gave the slaughterhouse like a month's advance notice before he did his inspection, which was absurd because they took all the dead and dying pigs out and they made it look real pretty. And so then he said that it was a model plant and one of the best in South Dakota.
Gosh.
I've just been doing some research into chicken slaughterhouses, and I had to get footage for a project that I'm working on. And I found footage from Farm Animal Transparency, and then I found footage from the same facility that they had put out. And of course, theirs was all this pretty, look how wonderful we are, and everyone's,
conveniently, they don't show the slaughter room.
Didn't show anything in the background of, what went on. And look how well looked after these animals are. And then you look at the footage from Farm Animal Transparency, and you go, here's the reality. This is what they're hiding. And I just wish because of course here in Australia, Farm Animal Transparency have been squashed. Is that quite the right word? Or all their footage has been withheld because they're saying, they got it illegally, so it can't be shown. And I find that's just so bizarre that we can't show this footage of what is happening with animal cruelty because it was got by a secret camera.
So essentially the facilities, the animal farms are claiming ownership of that footage because it was obtained illegally in their premises. So, the animal rights organisations here in Australia can't take any of this stuff to court because they can't use the video evidence. So it's a really tough time here in Australia.
Yeah. And of course, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, we have certain laws like that in some states too, where it's 1 and 2 party taping, and you're only allowed to do it if you can get consent of the other party and stuff like that. But that must be very, very discouraging when you have such good evidence and can't use it.
Well, the thing that annoys me even more is animal rights activists here exposing gross animal cruelty could face sentences of 5 to 10 years in jail. Yet a rapist, an abuser, will get maybe 2 years with a non-parole period of a year and a bit. And you just go, hang on, what's worse here? And we've had pedophiles who've gone to jail for maybe 3 years with a non-parole period of 1.5 years. How is that less of a crime than exposing gross animal cruelty?
It's because of the money involved.
Yeah. It just blows me away that animal rights activists could be thrown away for years upon years.
Let me just say, in that South Dakota case, that the prosecutor refused to prosecute. We provided videotape, we provided still photos, and we provided 800 pages of worker testimony. And he still
Wow.
didn't do anything.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Ah.
Obviously, all of this takes such a massive emotional toll. And throughout the book, you shared that you kind of recognized you were stuffing your emotions away in order to cope. So I was curious, at what point did you realize that, and how did you start moving beyond that?
I was having so many problems with my visual perceptual disorder that it was hard to focus on my feelings. I don't know when I realized that I was stuffing my feelings. I just realized that maybe if I got in touch with my feelings, my visual processing problem would get better, because everybody told me it was in my head, which it wasn't. Well, it is, because it's a neurological problem, but it's not like I'm crazy. Just over time, with a little bit less stress and a good spiritual practice, I've come to get a little more in touch with my emotions. Not as much in touch as I would like to be, but I'm still sort of detached from some of the animal stuff, but I'm better than I used to be.
Yeah, it does take its toll, and it takes its toll on pretty much everybody in the whole movement that does go to the extremes. So yeah, I'm so glad you're still with us and still doing all the work that you're doing, because you are amazing. But just sort of jumping back into the pig issue, so you're on the precipice of a
Prosecutorial.
That's the word, win for pigs in Ohio. But unfortunately, that didn't end up in your favor. So what happened with the case in Ohio?
Yeah, that was another corruption-laden case. I mean, it was unbelievable. The case was that old sows who had just spent sows that could no longer walk, who had spent their lives in gestation crates measuring less than 2 feet wide, because some of the gestation crates we saw were only 19 inches wide. They had spent their whole lives in there, and they could no longer walk. So the farm operator, the producer, kicked and dragged and hot-shotted them down the farm alleyway into a door to the outdoors, and then pushed them over a 4-foot ledge onto the freezing cold earth, onto piles of other sows that could no longer walk. And then one of the workers fastened a chain around the sows' necks and put the other end of the chain, fastened it to the tines of a front end loader, a forklift. And then he lifted the fork of the forklift, and the sows were left dangling and thrashing and struggling for 5 minutes until they eventually suffocated under the weight of their own bodies. And we got
unbelievable.
We got this on videotape, and so we were able to finally find a prosecutor who was willing to prosecute. But unfortunately, the judge was a local farmer. And there was not a jury case. It was just a case with a judge. So of course the local farmer judge ruled in favor of the defendants, except on one minor misdemeanor count of tossing piglets, because they would throw the piglets into bins. And so that was extremely shocking. We were there with our jaws hitting the floor when he said not guilty.
Oh my God.
If I recall correctly, you also had veterinarians as part of the prosecution who were saying that this was an acceptable method of euthanasia.
Yes, a paid witness that testified on behalf of the defendants. He had never been to the farm. He came from a state far away from the state that the farm was in. He knew nothing, but he was just paid as an expert witness to testify to the fact that that was not inhumane. It was absurd. But on the bright side, the videotape was published by HBO, which is a home box office, a big platform here in the United States. And they did a documentary, an hour and a half long documentary that aired dozens of times. And it gave people a window into what goes on behind the closed doors of factory farms. So that was really great.
Is any of that footage publicly available for people to be able to see now?
Yes. It's on my Instagram account, but it's also, you can Google Death on a Factory Farm. That's the name of the documentary, and you can watch it online.
Okay.
I'm glad that you were able to get some kind of exposure despite the lack of prosecution. What year was the documentary released, and how was it received by the public?
It was released in 2009, and I don't know the public's response. I just know that they kept airing it. They aired it 19 times in the first month, and then they kept airing it for months and months and months. So it must have gotten a good response.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I will definitely be going, and not that I really want to be watching more footage, but I will definitely be going to look that up. But through all this, and I mean, this is what I find absolutely incredible, your absolute strength and your willpower to keep pushing forward and keep exposing things. But through all this, the symptoms of your visual processing disorder got so bad that you described operating by sheer power of will. What was it that kept you going?
Well, actually, Rick, it was the most famous neurologist in the world that said it was sheer power of will. I don't think I would have said that about myself, but and he didn't know what it was. He didn't know what was wrong with me. He just told me I was depressed, which I don't get depressed. I'm a real optimistic person. So, but he was on the right track when what he said might be going on in my brain. So, but anyway, how did I keep going was that I didn't have a choice. You know what it's like. You know what it's like when you know that animals are being brutalized and you're the only person that knows what's happening, and you can't sleep at night. You just have to put the one foot in front of the next and do the next right thing. I just had no choice. I was falling apart, and I just kept doing it because I didn't have a choice.
I think a lot of us in the animal rights movement really feel that sort of the weight of the world on our shoulders. No one else is going to do it, so we feel that responsibility to keep doing it, even when it is sometimes detrimental to our own health. But you finally received a diagnosis, as you said earlier, after 60 years. So can you tell us what it was like to have that validation?
Oh, it was such a relief. It was just so, like you said, validating. It was like, by this time, even my family thought I was crazy. I mean, I thought I was crazy. My family thought I was crazy. But I knew I wasn't making this up. Even though I really thought I was doing it to myself on some level, because I didn't know what else to think, I knew I wasn't making it up. So it was just such a relief. Yeah.
I'm just blown away that you have lived with this your entire life and done the amazing work that you've been able to do without faltering. You know, if you got knocked down, you jumped back up again and you just went harder at it. And I'm in such admiration of your life and what you've been achieving. But what I want to know, is there an actual cure for what you have? And or how do you manage your symptoms now?
Well, there is no cure. There was one small study on a medication that helped like 19 people or something. It was a really small study, and it helped. I can't remember if it was 19 people, but or the whole study was with 19 people and it only helped 3 or something. It was really a small amount. I tried the medication, but it didn't help me. But my symptoms of the visual processing, confusion, and that feeling like you live in a funhouse mirror, that doesn't happen very often anymore. So that's like wonderful. I have a lot of glare, a lot of sensitivity to light. I see the little dots, they shimmer all the time, but I'm used to that because I've seen that my whole life. And I have a lot of floaters, which some people know what they are. They're very disruptive. But I just try to not pay attention to that.
And if people are curious to learn more, I encourage them to read the book, because this big revelation of your diagnosis sort of happens at the climax of the book, and it's a big part of your story, among so many other aspects that you share very vulnerably throughout the book. So we'll put a link in the show notes where people can get a copy of it and read it for themselves.
Yeah, I've gotten letters from people who have the same disorder, and they said, I never heard of this. I can't believe you wrote this. I was shaking when I was reading your book. So people that have the disorder are also learning about themselves from the book.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like, here you are doing all this stuff for animals, but then almost unknowingly helping humans to deal with what they've been going through as well. I mean, this lady is a pure visionary. She's really amazing.
Oh, you both are so kind.
Well, now, can you tell us about what Humane Farming Association's current work is now? What are they moving into?
Well, we've got a lot of cases, a lot of legal cases right now, a lot of litigation going on. But we've done anti-cruelty investigations, national media campaigns. Like, we're the sponsors of the National Veal Boycott, which is a long-running campaign in which we've seen veal production drop by 89%. So that's like really good. We've done legislation. We also operate a 7,000 acre farm animal refuge, which is the largest farm animal refuge in the country. And it's so wonderful to go there and see animals that were seized as a result of cruelty cases living out their best lives. They get such expert care, and they're so loved and so wonderful. But we've got lots of different cases going on. There was one just recently where a company decided to file for bankruptcy and allow 2 million broiler chickens to starve to death because they just stopped feeding them. So my supervisor had the idea, while people were complaining about the fact that they had gotten a lot of funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and they were mad about that, my supervisor said, well, what about the cruelty statute? They're in violation of the cruelty statute. You can't just abandon animals or prevent them from having adequate nutrition. So we got a prosecutor to agree to file civil charges. There weren't criminal, but they admitted, that they were ultimately found culpable for allowing these 2 million chickens to starve to death. So, but there's no jail time or anything like that, which there should be.
Gosh, I'm so thankful for your organization and all of the work that you're doing, because otherwise these things would just go under the radar. There's no one else drawing attention to the plight of animals in the same way. So it's unbelievable work, and we're very grateful for you and everything that you're doing.
But the thing that always gets me is these places of abuse, when the authorities are going to go in and investigate them, probably 90% of the time they give them forewarning.
Yeah.
And they're saying, okay, in a couple of weeks we're going to be coming and we're investigating. So they just clean up their act and make it look like it's everything's peachy keen and everything's fine. Everyone's looked after well.
Yeah.
Right. That's happened to me a lot. And there's so much corruption in the federal government here in the U.S. The U.S. Department of Agriculture engages in so much corruption to cover up for the meat industry. It's just very, very discouraging. But we've had a lot of successes too. We shut down what was going to be the third largest hog factory in the world. It was going to produce 1 million pigs a year. So that was great. And we stopped all the egregious crimes that we've documented, and we shut down a number of other operations. And my success with the Washington Post, unlike the network television media, was great because the Washington Post, I begged them to do a story on my slaughter findings, and they did. And then Congress read about it, and they were enraged. They said this is barbaric that this is going on, and they funded the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act for the first time. It had been on the books for 43 years, and it had never had a dime put towards its enforcement. So not that it's being properly enforced, but it was a minor step in a positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that Jane Goodall was also involved in that campaign. Is that correct?
Yeah, she helped out too. She was wonderful. Yes.
Yeah,
we all
such a light lost.
Yeah, we all love Jane and the work that she did. And I remember she was on Moby Pod, the musician Moby's podcast, and what was she, 93 or 90, somewhere around there?
Yeah, early 90s, I think.
Early 90s, and Moby said, so, with everything that you're doing, what is your next big journey? And she said, oh, well, I'm planning to do this, and this, but very sadly, not that long after she did pass away. But I guess that's a really big journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, she has left such a legacy and is just an amazing person.
Yeah.
Right. She didn't think twice when we asked her to help us out. She just did it right like that.
Yeah.
And I think she also read your book. I noticed that she wrote some lovely words about it.
Yeah, she was a gem. She was amazing to me personally, and she was an amazing human being.
Yeah. Oh, well, on that note, I guess it's time to wrap up. But thank you so much for your time. I think we've said it a few times already, but you have so much perseverance, so inspiring. And I think this is one of those episodes that our audience will take away a lot of positivity and motivation from. Despite all of the tough topics, there's just that underlying message of perseverance. And we all have that resolve to keep going to see wins for animals.
And
absolutely.
Like Jane Goodall believed in hope, and I believe in hope too.
Well, I think that's a thing. We can never give up on hope. We can see, although in an abolitionist world we want things to change straight away, but we can see changes starting to happen. And I think I read somewhere the other day that it was like 3% of the world's population are now vegan. And when you think about 3%, it's like around 80 million people. And you go, that's not small. That's actually pretty big.
Wow.
So, you start seeing those changes happening and people starting to wake up and starting to go, hey, I've got to change. I've got to do something. And, whether they become an activist or not doesn't matter. As long as they stop funding the abuse of animals, that's what we really want.
I actually just have a bit of a segue question for you, Gail. I think with the state of the world at the moment, at least in this activist community here in Sydney, I think a lot of people are feeling a lot of fatigue and a bit of despair. So I'm wondering if it's a similar sort of feeling in the US, and how do you think we can inspire people to get active again and feel like there is hope and that we shouldn't give up?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a lot of despair here in the U.S. I don't know the answer to that question, except to just keep hope in your heart and know that things can change, because they do change. It's like I just kept thinking, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and then things happened. So just know that we're all part of the solution, and vegans should be really, really proud of themselves for being part of the solution.
Yeah.
Oh,
lovely
that's a
message.
That's a great message to take out. But so how can listeners get a copy of your book and also support the work of AHFA?
I guess they can get a copy of my book. They can go to I don't know how it would work actually in Australia, but Amazon carries it and bookstores carry it here in the US, and they can go to my website, which is justmyname.com.
I'm sure we'd be able to buy it on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. And they can support Humane Farming Association by going to www.hfa.org. So if they want to join.
Cool. That's a nice, easy web address to remember.
I'll also put everything in the show notes, your social media links as well as website links, and link to the book.
Oh, Gail, what can we say but thank you from the bottom of our hearts, our souls, for being such an inspiration, such an incredible investigator, animal rights activist, everything. You really are inspiring. We thank you for being here with us.
Well, you certainly have made my week. I mean, you make me feel like $1 million. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We will see you next week for another episode.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please let us know by leaving a comment and share this episode with a friend.